the Knicks just traded for Karl Anthony Towns. They sent Dante DiVincenzo and Julius Randle and a first-round pick in a blockbuster trade. Blockbuster. I was like, whoa, what just happened when I looked at it? And I'm going to give you a lot of different thoughts I have on what I think happened with this trade. My first thoughts when I saw the notification on my phone, I said, is this a fair trade? I wanted to look into it more and I wanted to think about it. And I'm just going to go ahead and say it right here. My team is the Knicks. That's my squad right there. So I don't want to try and emotionally approach this conversation. I want to actually give you the details and the facts of me breaking down what this means for our team, the organization, and what it's going to look like going for us for the rest of the season right here. So the new starting lineup is going to be Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, and Karl Anthony Towns. That's going to be our new starting five going into the season. So my initial thoughts on the deal was like, damn, we lost DiVincenzo. And a big thing with losing DiVincenzo was, he has a lot of chemistry, the whole Villanova Knicks, right? And they literally brought Mikal Bridges in to just make it literally like it's what they had when they were in college together. So I'm like, damn, we lost DiVincenzo. And I know Karl Anthony Towns is a great player. And I started to think to myself, is Karl Anthony Towns, like how much of an upgrade is Karl Anthony Towns over Julius Randle? Because that's something that's getting lost in this whole trade talk. Is Julius Randle was a really good player. But when we look at him versus Karl Anthony Towns, I think it's pretty consensus. Everybody agrees Karl Anthony Towns is a better player. I would say Julius is a little bit more of a playmaker than Karl Anthony Towns, but every other aspect of the game, I think clearly leans in the favor of Karl Anthony Towns. So my thoughts on the deal, now that I've had a chance to think about it and look at it, I'm going to break it down to you unemotionally because listen, all I know is we got a squad this year. So we only going to improve on last year. So the first thing I want to talk about is what that does for spacing on the court. And especially as the game has evolved ever since the 7 seconds or less offense that we had with the Phoenix Suns and Mike D'Antoni and trying to get all these threes and shooting corner threes or getting layups, spacing is really, really important. Even in the 90s when the game was a lot slower and played more in mid-range and near the basket with big men and guards that could post up, you still needed shooters out there to create spacing. Spacing on the NBA court is extremely important because that's going to allow players to be able to get more one-on-one opportunities. Because when a double team comes, if you're kicking to a knockdown shooter, that just becomes a problem. What's worse, trying to stop somebody one-on-one or giving a really good shooter a wide-open shot? You're better off just trying to guard a good player one-on-one unless, they're just really taking over. But that's the cat and mouse game, and that's what spacing provides. So I wanted to look up some stats from last year. So according to basketballreference.com, the average three-point shooting percentage in the NBA last year, this is for last season, 2022 to 2023. No, 2023 to 2024, I'm sorry. So this is the last season. The average shooting from three-point range is 36.6%. And the first thing I wanted to think about was, how do we compare to the league average now that we just swapped out a player who was a good playmaker but is nowhere near the shooter that Karl Anthony Towns is? It's actually funny. My mom, who's a diehard Knicks fan too, she loves Dante DiVincenzo because he shoots threes. She loves players who shoots threes. She's like, oh my God, we just let DiVincenzo go. I said, Ma, relax. The person that we got for him literally won the three-point shootout. He's a big man that won the three-point shootout. So just think about what that's going to do as far as the shooting on our team is concerned. So remember, the league average is 36.6%. Now, last year, the top two teams from three-point percentage were Oklahoma City at 38.5 and Boston Celtics at 38.3. Now, that number's a little bit skewed because Boston made way more threes than everybody else. Like, for example, even though Oklahoma City shot 0.2% better than Boston last year, Boston averaged making 16.5 threes a game, whereas Oklahoma City made 13.3, and guess what? The Knicks were right there at 13.2. So this is the starting lineup from a three-point percentage of how they shot last year. Now, let's compare this to the league average. Jalen Brunson, MVP candidate last year, had a career year, 40.1 three-point shooter. Now, Josh Hart, he's at 31%. He could shoot the three, but he's not really a shooter. He's more of a drive to the basket, the guy that gets the offensive rebound and drives it back up coast to coast and try to put some pressure on the defense. Then you got Mikal Bridges, the new addition from last year, 37.2. OG Anunoby last year, 39.4. And then our other new addition, Karl Anthony Towns, 41.6. And then one of the players that comes off of the bench, Miles Deuce McBride, he's a 41% shooter from three last year. So there's a world where you got to remember, right? When you're on a really, really good team, these numbers that we had last year, they're actually going to get better because players are going to have more open shots because we're going to be a better offense as a whole. So if let's say that there's a lineup that you want to play and you take Josh Hart out for a little while, even though the guy never comes out of the game, Deuce comes in, it's completely logical that next year there are moments that we may have 5 players that shoot 40% from three on the court at the same time that all fit with each other. I want you to think about that for a second. That all 5 players on the court, there's a lineup that will play at times that will be able to shoot 40% from the field, from three-point range. And even if you have Josh Hart out there, you still got 4 other guys. So he's the person that, let's say they double Jalen Brunson, he kicks it out to Josh Hart. Josh Hart is the type of player that will then put pressure on the defense and then can kick to somebody else. It's just nothing but shooters everywhere. Now imagine all the pick and rolls, the pick and pop that we're going to be able to play with Jalen Brunson, that now you have to decide who you're going to go with. And just for perspective, I wanted to pull up what the three-point percentage is for the starting lineup of the Celtics when they're at full strength, because KP, Kristaps Porzingis, is hurt right now, but I wanted to add him in, right? Because this is the starting 5 that everybody really needs to be able to compete with if everyone's healthy. So Drew Holiday last year shot 42.9. Derek White was 39.6. Jaylen Brown was 35.4. And Tatum was 37.6. KP was at 37.5. So you can see, as far as shooting goes, we're right up there with the best of them, and we could easily there's a scenario where we're literally the best shooting team in the league next year, or at least top 3. So that's what the spacing will do. And also, the other thing that spacing does, and the beautiful part about having all these shooters on the court, is that it allows you to be able to go one-on-one and get better driving lanes. We saw what Jalen Brunson can do from all different levels, whether it's near the basket, mid-range, or for three-point range. He's going to have more room to work with. Karl Anthony Towns is going to be down in the post. You double him, OG Anunoby is going to be wide open for a 3, right? You got Mikal Bridges. These guys are all athletic as well. So if they get the ball, they can fake the shot, bring it to the rim. We have multiple players that can then, from a trap or a double team, proceed to put massive pressure on the defense and actually get us even more wide open shots. And that's the beautiful thing about spacing that works like this. It's usually hard to get this type of spacing because it's hard to get this many shooters on one team that also fit within the positions that you need to be able to compete with other lineups that teams are able to put out there. Now let's talk about the calling card of the New York Knicks, which is defense. That's Tom Thibodeau's bread and butter. He loves to play defense. And let's look at the stats for last year, according to NBA.com. Team points per game against last year. Number 1, the Timberwolves at 106.5, and the Knicks were at 108.2. Now the Celtics are at 109.2. It's a little bit skewed because the Knicks play at a slower pace than the Celtics do. The Celtics literally just shoot as many threes as possible. They play a lot faster, so they're going to end up having more points scored. For example, the Celtics, they scored 120.6 points per game last year, right? And then their defense allowed 109.2. Whereas the Knicks, they allowed 108.2, but only scored 112.8. So even though we beat them by a point on points per game, a lot of it has to do with the pace. We just had fewer possessions in the games that the Knicks played. Now let's look at how defense is affected by what happened with this trade. So we lost Dante DiVincenzo, who was a good defender. He definitely would put in effort and was a pretty decent defender on the Knicks. He's being replaced by a former All-NBA first-team defender in Mikal Bridges in 2022. He was All-NBA first team. Not only was he All-NBA first team in 2022 with the Suns, he was runner-up for Defensive Player of the Year. So we got a guy that we just added to an already solid defensive team, replaced a guy who's okay at defense, and replaced him with a guy that was number 2 for Defensive Player of the Year 3 years ago. So that's what we're doing with Mikal Bridges. Then you pair him up with OG Anunoby, who last year was voted the 4th best defensive forward last year. So out of the entire league, OG Anunoby was voted the 4th best defensive forward, and that earned him an All-NBA second-team defensive selection. So we have 2 All-NBA wing defenders. So all that, wing play that goes on in the NBA, I think we got the best 2 wing defenders in the league to go up against anybody that, is out on the wings. So then we talk about Karl Anthony Towns. He's replacing Julius Randle, who, he was banged up most of last year. Julius Randle was never really known for his defense. He was known for more of being a guy that had the ability to play make and could handle the ball for somebody his size. This is what Jokic, who's considered, pretty much like the best offensive player the last few years. Guys got 3 out of 4 of the last MVPs. He's literally unstoppable. Won a championship a couple years back. So during the regular season, Jokic had an offensive rating of 131. This is based on advanced analytics offensive ratings from the NBA. So 131, right? And he's an elite offensive player. The guy literally is one of the greatest offensive big men of all time. That goes down slightly this is for the 2024 season. It goes from 131 during the regular season down to, the playoffs, things tighten up, to 125.9 is his offensive rating when in the 2024 playoffs. In the first round against Anthony Davis, who's known as one of the better big men defenders that we have in the league, Jokic had a 133.9 offensive rating against Anthony Davis. Then he had a 120.4 offensive rating against Rudy Gobert, who was the Defensive Player of the Year. Jokic had a 119.5 against Karl Anthony Towns. Think about that for a second. One of the most difficult people in the history of the NBA to guard, Karl Anthony Towns, one-on-one, held his own. He actually gave Jokic the most problems when it came down to defending him in the Western Conference second round last year. I was pleasantly surprised to see the type of defense that Karl Anthony Towns was playing. He was committed. You could see that he wanted it. He took on the challenge. Now, no one's going to stop Jokic. You're just not going to stop him. But at least he bothered him. So to think that somebody that had that type of defensive performance, and this was over 7 games, the Wolves pulled it out at the end. This was over 7 games. Karl Anthony Towns showed he could play defense. Now, is he going to be able to stop Joel Embiid? No one can stop Joel Embiid. Just like no one can really stop Jokic. All you can do is try to slow him down or get them in foul trouble. And that's the beauty of him being as talented as he is offensively. You got to try and get the other team's big men in foul trouble. So, hold on. I am just making sure. Y'all thought I wasn't recording for a second. So that was what he was able to do against Jokic. So now when you add him and Mikal Bridges to the overall defensive construction of the New York Knicks, and with Tom Thibodeau being there as somebody that's a defensive-minded coach, there's a world where we're a top shooting and top defensive team in the league next year. Very, very easily, we could be top 3 in both and really push to being one of the top ones in each. Now that we have the spacing and the shooting and the defense, let's talk about what's really important as far as winning games, right? Is going to be shooting, is going to be the spacing that you have on the floor, and then you got to have somebody that has the ability to make shots. And we got our guy in Jalen Brunson. He showed last year in the playoffs when everybody knew the ball was going to him. The Sixers just couldn't stop him. And that was one of my concerns with us having. He's not the typical like small player. Like, he's a very strong, big body. That's what Kendrick Perkins always calls him, big body Brunson. He play like a big man sometimes. He put people in the post, hit him with the little turnaround. He gets in the paint. He has a mid-range game. He has a bag that he can go to in clutch moments during a game, and he showed that last year. And that's what championship teams need. You got to be able to shoot. You got to be able to play defense, and then you need somebody that you could count on to be able to make shots. And with adding Karl Anthony Towns, or even if Julius Randle was coming back this year, we wouldn't have had to have as much of an offensive load as Brunson. I don't think his numbers are going to be – I don't think he's going to score as many points as he did last year because he just doesn't need to. We're going to have a much stronger all-around team, and he's going to want to try and pace himself and save himself more for end-of-game situations or when it's really crunch time, because he's got to allow the fact that we have those other pieces to help guide us to victory. So the other thing with that, too, in crunch time, because I'm going to say it, Jalen Brunson a superstar. For him to do the type of things he's doing in New York, nah, he a superstar, bona fide. We got players that can drive. We got players that can shoot. And the other thing, too, is bringing Karl Anthony Towns over. It fits in with the chemistry. Karl Anthony Towns, even though he was a number 1 pick and a preeminent skilled big man in our league, he's used to being the number 2, which is what he was in Minnesota. He wasn't the number 1 offensive weapon. It was Anthony Edwards. So he fits right into that sidekick role, kind of like a Anthony Davis did for LeBron type of situation, where he doesn't have to be the one to carry the team. And I think he's going to thrive. There's going to be some games where he just goes crazy and the Garden is going to love him for it. We're going to be cheering him on. It's going to be a game he get 10 threes. I'm telling you right now, this guy's that talented on offense. And you know that, he grew up, I think he grew up being a Knicks fan. I think he's from New Jersey. So he's going to want to show out coming over here. And he's going to want to show that he's one of the best big men in the league. So we got Brunson as our closer. We got a superstar in Brunson. Karl Anthony Towns has the ability to be a superstar, but, we'll call him a bona fide perennial all-star for now. Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby are role players. That's one of the things that Boston had that made them so powerful. Derek White is damn near an all-star caliber player. Jrue Holiday was an all-star, and these guys are taking reduced roles within that starting 5. That's what makes Boston so tough. And Kristaps Porzingis is an all-star caliber player as well. They've got players at every position. So you got players that would be all-stars that are role players. And I like the approach we took to try and get more players by paying a little bit less, by going and getting Mikal Bridges, signing OG Anunoby. Shout out to Jalen Brunson for taking less money so that it gave us more to work with as far as the salary cap is concerned, and bringing Cat over instead of us going and, sending everything to get Paul George, even though the Sixers are going to be real tough. I'm going to go into more of a breakdown of all the other teams, and this is just, I want to focus on the Knicks. So like I said, man, we got a superstar. We got all-star in Karl Anthony Towns, a clear number 2 that could take over a game. Brunson, there's going to be games where Brunson's just saying, yo, go. Yeah, just take the ball. Shut it down. You got Mikal Bridges, who's a 20-point-per-game scorer in this league, all-NBA defensive first team. We got the 2 epitomes of 3-and-D guys with OG Anunoby and with Mikal Bridges. These guys are going to be suffocating when it comes to guarding wing defenders, and because they don't have to carry a large offensive load, they can expend a lot of energy because they don't have to carry the offense on the other side. They just got to hit threes. And then, they got the ability to be athletic and go and challenge at the basket. I'm going to love watching every game this season because this is the best team we had in, 30 years. I think the 90s was the last time there was a team that had a shot to make the type of noise that this team does. So those are the things that are going to happen. So the defense is improved, the offense is improved, and because of the way the salary cap is in the NBA now, it's harder to get max players and then still put players around them. Ever since the Warriors were able to do that nonsense with Kevin Durant and have like 5 Hall of Fame players on the court at the same time, it's been hard for teams to build that type of super team. Also, because of the depth of talent that's in the league, like the 4th, 5th best players on starting lineups 15, 20 years ago probably would be all-stars. That's just how deep the league's talent is. There's Jamal Murray's never made an all-star team. I want you to think about that. Jamal Murray, one of the most clutch players in the NBA, championship player with Jokic, the closer on that team. This guy's never made an all-star team because there's so much talent in the NBA. Because there's so much talent in the NBA, you can't just win just based on superstars anymore. You're going to need a superstar, but it's going to be what type of chemistry can the team have because now there's so many players that are superstar caliber in the NBA. There's a lot of players. So by having players that fit well together rather than just trying to accumulate like how Miami, big 3, that's it. They were just so good, they were able to win, and they just put pieces around them. So the chemistry that we have on this team is going to work really, really well together, and everybody should be able to play off of each other really, really well. And I think that because we have the shooting, because we have the defense, we got somebody to get the ball down the stretch that you can't just double team. If you do, you're going to leave somebody else that can make a play wide open. And we have another guy that can, really just go crazy. Randall can't go crazy like Cat. Cat could literally go get you 50, 60, 70 in a game. He's done it before. So he's like one of the most explosive offensive big men in the league, and now he's going to be playing in the Garden. So right now, I'm going to talk about what their odds are to win the chip. So the chemistry, I just want to finish on it. I'm real hyped and excited about this. The chemistry is going to be paramount, and I really like the way that we constructed our team. We'll see if it's enough to win. I'll tell you who I think probably has the edge. It could be the Knicks, but you're going to have to watch next episode or whenever I do the NBA preview, what I give as far as the breakdown for the rest of the league. Now, because we got that chemistry and all those things, DraftKings, I went to them for the sports book to see what the odds were. They got them at 8-1. It goes the Celtics, I think were 3-1. Let me see what those were. The Celtics I think are, Celtics are plus 310. Thunder at 700, so 7-1, and the Knicks right there at 8-1. And the 76ers at 9-1. Denver 9.5-1, Timberwolves 10-1, Mavs 10-1, Milwaukee Bucks 14-1, Lakers 30-1, Suns 30-1. So we have the third shortest odds to win the NBA championship behind the Celtics and the Thunder as of right now. And the 76ers are right there. And the Knicks were like 10-1 in most books before this trade.